Okay, so we'll start now, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. My dear respected brothers and sisters, viewers, today, inshallah, we're going to go over some of the really important aspects of the Maktab system, inshallah. And I will be starting the session, and after a certain period, I'll open it up for discussion or so, if there's any questions based on the presentation that I'm doing. After that, I will talk a little bit about the curriculum. So I'm starting with the importance. Then I'll talk a little bit about the curriculum itself, different options and different aspects we need to consider as well. And then we will move on to our guest speaker from Illinois, Lombard, Illinois in Chicago, Brother Talha, and he will take some aspects of it, inshallah, and then we'll take some question and answers as well. So to start, I want to thank all of you for coming and for attending today's session. We do have a few people that will be coming in as we go along, but inshallah, let's get going, and we will adjust accordingly afterwards. So let me put up my screen here and start off with the presentation that I have. So inshallah, today, the importance and the history of Maktab system. And in my first presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about our purpose of being here, teaching and learning as a career itself, and the importance of it, the history of Maktab and some realities, our challenges and area of concerns. In Hakim, Sahih Hadith mentioned by Imam Hakim rahimahullah, he mentions, إِنَّكُمْ لَا تَرْجِعُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ بِشَيْءٍ أَفْضَلَ مِمَّا خَرَجَ مِنْهُ يعني Al-Quran. We know that the Quran itself is the essence of our practice, the essence of who we are as Muslims. We know that it is the one principle that every single individual, whether it be different sects and so on, they all will agree on the Quran. The Quran is one thing that we all unite on. So here, this hadith is the Prophet ﷺ is saying that you would not be able to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with anything that is greater from what was from Allah. So that thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, what emanates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is the thing that you will be able to go back to Allah with. Yani al-Quran, meaning referring to the Quran. So if you want to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to connect to the Quran. Now that being mentioned, what is interesting, and I'll give you a personal incident. Once I was importing some books, and those books that was coming, someone said to me, the agent who was the agent, what do you call these guys who import this stuff? The ones who are the brokers. He said to me that if it is Qur'ans, then you don't have to pay any taxes, because the taxes for Qur'ans in Trinidad and Tobago obviously is free. There's no taxes for these types of materials. So then I said to him, I said that all of the information of the books, the mawdu' or the topics that these books that I'm bringing, they're all related to the Quran. They're all actual descriptions of what the Quran is saying and the manner of, for example, praying and fiqh kitabs and maktab books and so on. So when I said that to him, he was a bit confused. He was like, but you're saying that this Quran, but it's not actual Qurans. I said, this is the information from the Quran. This is the ilm and the ulum that emanates from the Quran. And that's the beauty of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the fiqh that we're doing, all of the hadith studies that we're doing, all of the, the akhlaq studies that we're doing, even parts of the history of the studies that we're doing, it's all the core of it is actually the matan, is actually the Quran. The source of all of that information is the Quran. So it's not false. It's not anyway wrong to say that the information that you're teaching in Maktab, for example, you're teaching part and parcel of the Quran. You're teaching the implementation of the laws of the Quran. So what I'm saying is, if you were to put everything in a pinnacle in one, one major area, what do you teach, or what, this information that you're gathering and teaching and emulating, it is the Quran itself. It is the application of the Quran. It is all of the things that is expected of a person to do. So when we talk about the fadail of a person reading the Quran, a person who is teaching the Quran, a person who is learning the Quran, it will also be, a person will get that merit as well of this science, inshallah. So I just wanted to highlight that point first. When we talk about the importance of Maktab, we talk about the teaching of Maktab, becoming a Maktab teacher, we know, and maybe I should have gone a little bit more in the fadail, but I'm sure many of the people here, they already have that interest of teaching the studies of Deen, have been learning Deen, have been, trying to find ways of building a Maktab system in their locality and so on, in their community. So that's something you've understood already, the importance of it. So I want to further highlight that when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Khayrukum man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allama," that the best of you are those people who learn the Quran and teach it, the Maktab teachers are also included in this. The people who help with establishing the Maktab also is included in this. The people who help with the management of the Maktab is also included. The people who help with the driver as well, they're included in some form or some fashion. So everybody would have different stages, obviously, but it all is part of the propagation, the preservation, and implementation of the Quran and the sciences of the Quran. So I just wanted to highlight that. So every single person who wants to make that effort, you have been given an opportunity to become khayrukum, the best. And doing that itself will ensure that you have a very sacred position in the sight of Allah, in the preservation of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in continuing the work of the Anbiya alayhi salam. So I want to highlight that, and I want to try to make sure that everyone understands that, because we downplay this a lot, and I'm sure you would have done it. I'm sure people around you would have done it if not. If you are working hard to get children to come to the Maktab, if you're working hard to establish the affairs of the Maktab, you want the Maktab facility to be better, you are spending your time sometimes coming in the afternoon and sitting down with children and teaching, and you are yourself, for example, taking out the time on a Saturday and a Sunday and so on, you're doing a very virtuous job. And that is the preservation of the deen. This is the work of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. This is the same things that all of the great scholars and all of the people who want to do an action that is of great virtue, this is one of those actions, and you continue doing that knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed this rank a very rewarding and one that has a lot of benefit in it, inshallah. So moving forward, I just want to give a little background of some of the things that we did. And Brother Talha, Ustad Talha, who will be joining us in the end, even him, he was part of some of these affairs as well, and he will give you that introduction, inshallah, when he comes on. But when I was spending time in England, one of the things that we did in one of the trips, we went to dozens of Maktab in England as well, trying to understand some of their practices and what they did. And England, for those people who would have visited, they would have known as well. Some places in England, some of the cities in England, they have a very strong Maktab system. Just like we hear stories of, for example, South Africa, we might hear stories of, I have here Sri Lanka, and you might have heard about, different places of the world, India and so on, wherever it is in the world, there are many strong Maktab facilities that is taking place. And one of the things about what I want to highlight here is the type of understanding with regard to the Maktab system, meaning the mentality, the methodology, the importance that the community is given. One is that, for example, for those who are locals here and who know Nur Islam Masjid and so on, Nur Islam Maktab is one of those Maktabs, like there's a few of them in the country, but in particular in Nurul Islam Maktab, in our masjid, it had been running a maktab for more than 30, 40 years now, non-stop. This maktab has continuous, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His mercy, for 40, 45 years. I'm talking about my parents, they went to maktab, and I went to maktab, and my children will go to maktab, and so on. And it's generations after generations, the maktab system has been continuing. But the point I'm making is there is an establishment of a maktab in the masjid. But I'll tell you that the mentality and the community does not accept the importance or give that due relevance to a maktab system, even in the Islam masjid or in the Sawa community. And likewise, the mentality in Trinidad and Tobago, and there are people from different parts as well. But the reality is those places in England, for example, in certain communities, they already have that importance of parents, regardless of their practice of deen, regardless of how much effort they've put in their own daily practices as Muslims, as believers, and how strong their iman is, they would still send their children to maktab because there's a pressure, there's a communal pressure that if your child does not go to maktab, then that child is being deprived of something that is great, khair kathir. So you find these communities, and because I spent a lot of time obviously in England, I can tell you firsthand that is something that is remarkable. That at the time of maktab, you see hundreds of students all over going to dozens of maktab around you, and people would be walking on the streets, and you would see all of the children walking towards maktab. And then when maktab finishes, it's 2 hours every single day for 2 hours a day. When they're leaving the maktab, you're seeing hundreds of students all over the road. It's like literally a town area where you see a school, for example, overing, and when school with the children with their uniforms and so on. But this is with the maktab system, and I'm not talking about a few, but hundreds of people on the road. Mothers going to pick up their children, and fathers going to pick up their children. They're walking on the roads and going on their way home, and it's like a boom of traffic time, because obviously when school time comes, when all of the students are going to school, at that point everyone is now going back to their homes and collecting, and all of the little bit of effort that goes around in dropping and picking up students. So the point is, there's a communal strength and understanding of the importance, and that's one of the things that we try to do in these type of workshops, is push that idea and that highlight certain points that if these things were embedded in each person's mind, especially the ones who are attending here, that everybody knows that they have to sacrifice for this. They have to put the effort, they have to make, the necessary arrangements, they have to talk to who they need to talk to, they need to put the establishment in order, because it is one that will strengthen the entire Muslim Ummah in wherever you're living and so on. So moving forward, I am also the principal of the Nurul Islam Maktab for approximately 6 or 7 years now. And I've had my own share of experiences, both on the part-time and full-time classes that we would conduct in the Nurul Islam Masjid. And Alhamdulillah, it's one of the bigger maktabs as well. And then when we went online as well, we were able to facilitate it. And that's through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I've had quite a few years of practically running and establishing and dealing with many of the challenges that we face. And I'll be quite honest with you, these challenges are real challenges that you are facing as well, and I have been facing it as well, and it's not coming close to a resolution yet, but the effort needs to continue. And even people spoke to me about, why is this like this, and why is it like that, and why is it not being resolved, and so on, and there are a lot of challenges to actually come to the final solution. Moving further, I did go to Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka, we went for the whole purpose of looking at their maktab system. And the reason why we went to Sri Lanka is Sri Lanka, like one of those countries, it runs under a jamiyat. Jamiyat is a group of scholars that come together for the purpose of establishing certain affairs of the Muslims. And in Sri Lanka, one of the things that the Jamia, that group of ulama, came together is establishing the maktab systems. And they have under their system, because a hierarchy with so many people on top, obviously on the boards, and then there's that maktab system which might have a head, and then it comes down to the leaders of the areas, and then that comes down to people who are the muawin and those people who support that system, and then it comes down to the teachers. It's a very big pyramid that of structure that everybody answers to each other until it reaches up the chain. The point is they have 60,000 students that are actually on that Maktab system, and they monitor, they evaluate, they check the consistency, but it runs with 60,000 students under one system. One system meaning they use the same books, they wrote their own books, they have the same exams, they have the same competition. So when somebody goes across the board and can probably be able to for example, write an exam and do really good, he has to compete with, maybe 10,000 students over the whole country, because it's the same amount of students that are writing the same types of exams. So there's some real good benefits on that, because you can actually move up the whole system and the whole community on one level and ensure that everybody is actually up to a certain given standard and a level as well. So that was fascinating, and we spent quite a few days there trying to establish that training and doing trying to understand more of how it works and the systems and so on, and looking at their books and so on, and we went through a whole process. And some of the guests that will come into this training, they will come and give you some of their experiences and so on, and some of their takeaways. Also, well, England is mentioned twice here for some reason. Okay, so probably my own experience, and then I went back particularly to study Maktab systems once, and then America. I spent some time with again Brother Talha and Mufti Ubaidullah would be in our next session as well, and the idea for that was to open up a American Maktab board that similarly oversees the whole range of maktabs, and then puts a standard and try to establish more and more practices will help. And so you'll get some more information about that as well. I think they established their website now. I've not been really in contact much, but I was part of the initial membership and the supporting group that started our process. And that was actually after our trip in Sri Lanka. And also in Barbados as well, I traveled just to particularly look at that Maktab system there as well. Smaller community, but they do have an established system that works very good and produces hafaz, and they produce different people in our Caribbean context. So I tried to see some of the Caribbean practices, because we have a different type of practice a lot of times in our Caribbean atmosphere, and that needs to be incorporated as well in discussions when it's being discussed about Maktab systems. All right, so moving on to the next slide here. Why do we teach? And sometimes it is very good, is beneficial for people to sometimes reevaluate what they're doing, why they're doing it, how much more effort they need to put in, how much they need to upgrade their systems, do a full recap of who they are and what they're doing. And that should be done in all systems, in Maktab systems, in management. I mean, those people who are businessmen, they will understand the importance of this. If you run an organization, you'll understand it. A masjid committee, whoever you are, whatever positions you are, even in your own homes, it's very important to reevaluate where you are and where you need to be at all given times. So sometimes we use those opportunities as khatibs and lecturers sometimes on the member, but we would talk about in the beginning of the new year, like we're here at Muharram, that's one of the topics that a lot of people would choose. Then we have obviously sometimes the Gregorian calendar, when there's after December, you talk about the new year and the importance of setting time goals and trying to improve yourself. So this is a question we should all ask ourselves sometimes. Why do we teach, and what is the purpose of teaching? One of the greatest benefits that we get, the best career that a person can have, is that of the connection of the Quran. If you can do a khidmah, a service to the Quran, then subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you very lofty statuses in Jannah, inshallah. We know anybody associated with the Quran is something that is automatically honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in fact, the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, I can't remember the actual wording, but the Quran itself, it raises people in their status, and it puts down people in their status as well. Right? So what I'm saying is the Quran is such a powerful thing that when a person associates with the Quran, starts learning, starts teaching, starts helping, starts producing, starts distributing, starts whatever it is, you automatically get captured in a group of people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored. And you will see that honor, you will see that grace in this world, and you will see it in the akhirah as well. Some of our teachers, when you would have heard this jokingly, they would say, have you ever seen a alim or hafiz, or somebody who does khidmat of deen, suffer out of hunger, have you seen that? No, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala generally would take care of the people who take care of the deen as well. And maybe they might not have riches and they might not have greatness and so on, but one thing that they wouldn't be is hungry and not have enough to be able to suffice for themselves. So even when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts it in their mind to honor somebody who does the maktab teacher, for example, or the hifz teacher or the imam, that is from Allah. That is from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on those people, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing them to get that honor as well. But nevertheless, the real honor is in the akhirah, in Jannah, inshallah, where there would be great merit given to that person. So the muallimin do not teach for a livelihood, but the essence of their teaching is for ibadah, a deen and the love of it. And this is a reality. You don't actually get a salary that is, even close to acceptable if it was for a job. But the reality is that you are doing a real khidmah, and this khidmah is considered an ibadah. That's why, and this is something that, I saw Mufti, one of the Muftis here with me. I don't know if he's still here. But one of the things that you can benefit from, when, for example, someone spends time doing salah, you're doing nafil salah, it is more meritorious to go ahead and teach deen, to teach your qaida to your little student there, or to your son, or to your daughter. Is more rewarding to do that than to go and spend time praying your nafil salah, right? Even some of the sometimes for the sunnah salah, but sunnah should be kept at that, you shouldn't disregard it in any way. What I'm saying is, if you were to weigh your nafil salah and you're teaching your maktab students, your maktab students actually give you more reward, and it is of a higher priority. So if it comes that you are a teacher and now salah times come in the middle, it is better to not pray all in nafil salah, but go back to your class and start teaching. You will get more reward, and it's more better for a person. So I'm saying is, you get actual reward. Passion of leaving a viable legacy, because one of the great merits that you would want to work for in your future is leaving something that will be a sadaqah jariyah. And sadaqah jariyah, the most effective one is spreading knowledge. One is you could build a road, you could build a house, you could build a building that will benefit other people. But sadaqah jariyah, the most effective one, is teaching children the kalima, teaching them Surah Fatiha. Imagine someone uses Surah Fatiha every single day to pray, and you are the cause of that Surah Fatiha. You taught them. And this is something I've mentioned before in other talks and so on. For mothers especially, or fathers, take that initiative to be the one to teach your children Surah Fatiha. Even if it, tutti putti is not so good and so on, make sure that they know Surah Fatiha from you, because you will benefit from their sadaqah jariyah every single time they have to recite it. When they become a musalli, you will get every single time that they recite Surah Fatiha. And when they teach hundreds of people Surah Fatiha, you will get that benefit. And when those hundreds of people teach another 100 people, they will get Surah Fatiha as well. So you see the benefits of it. You can actually measure your sadaqah jariyah by teaching, meaning measure it in the sense of, you're putting your money in some really good investments, and in the future you will see that return. So that's one of the kind of like somewhat abilities and the tricks, or the benefits, not tricks, but the benefits and the honor that is given to teachers of deen. They actually benefit from a great, enormous amount of sadaqah jariyah, which normal people wouldn't be able to grasp that benefit very easily. Last point here, when a person dies, all of the actions stop except 3 types. Anybody want to tell me what are they? Kind of covered it a little bit there. Okay, maybe you should get some engagement now. So you can put it in the chat there. What are some of the benefits, inshallah, that the person gets for the person who
علم
dies?
ينتفع به.
Yeah, mashallah. So this is the one that we're talking about, the ilm, right? Knowledge that others benefit from, right? And that he was able to spread, and others benefited from it. All right, so moving ahead, Umar radiallahu anhu as well, and our Sahaba, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, but as great as, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have obviously established, the Ashab al-Suffah and so on, and the establishment of that would be strategic in many ways. One of it is, giving, I mean, the simple ones that you can think about. One is giving the opportunity for people to have a place to stay. Some of them would have been to be able to feed them, and there was a good sadaqah and so on. People would come and leave money and places for food and so on for those ashab al-suffah. But one of the greatest things, and this is one of the, mind-boggling things that I really sometimes, interestingly, I think about it and I find it so interesting. The Ashab al-Suffah, and likewise the whole lineage of prophethood and that of ulama and scholars, and similarly the work of deen, you would always find those people who are simple, who would be the faster ones to accept your message. And sometimes we get caught up trying to get educated, really educated, or the rich, or the people who have been gifted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help support your work. And we start to turn our direction towards them to try and get them roped in, because when their children are strong and full of deen and practicing and so on, that for example, their wealth will be able to benefit the Muslim community, or their establishment, because mashallah, Allah has gifted some people, their jobs that they might get is better than the jobs of many other people. And similarly, there's so many different things that people can gain from strong, reliable people who have good sitting in the community. But the reality of it is that you would get people who are of the lower category faster to listen to your word and to be able to follow you on the path of righteousness and goodness. And this was the same practice of the Ashab al-Suffah, for example, the same practice of the Anbiya alayhi salatu, as you all would have known, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was asked about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Abu Sufyan was asked in the court of the Caesar, no, I think it's Caesar, or the Caesar, the Persian Empire. The one of the questions that was asked was the people that follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the rich, or are they from the less fortunate? And Abu Sufyan at that time, he answered that it was from the people who are the less fortunate. They are the ones who follow the Prophet faster. And the reality that I'm trying to draw our attentions towards is, work with those communities. You will be amazed with what type of results you'll bring the entire community and the strength of the nation of Islam with doing that. So what I'm saying is, recognize that you have a group in front of you. You have people in front of you that will listen and follow you. So use those people and don't try looking for all of the things that you wish ideally can be there. But when you have a group in front of you, those children who, when you call them, they will come because they don't have anything else to do. They don't have anywhere else to play. They don't have anywhere else to be able to do any extracurricular activities and so on. Their parents can't afford it. Then let those children be the source of your sadaqah jariyah and bringing up the entire community. That'll be very powerful, inshallah. That being said, here Umar had concern as well for the establishment of the children's education. And here that Khalifa Umar was one of the first persons to gather children in a Maktab. At that time, it was actually referred to as the Katatib, and it would hire Amir bin Abdullah al-Khazai to work and fix his stipend from the Baitul Mal. So even at the time of Umar, there was an establishment of a Maktab system, and that's where we will go in the future, inshallah, in these workshops, in the rest of the workshop, is that there needs to be a system that helps and ensures that the objective of the Maktab is being done and facilitated accordingly. So that's really, really important, and I hope these things are some sort of reminder for everyone, inshallah. Even though you might have known some of these things or heard some of these things, it's very important to, inshallah, get that reminder, because we are full of nisyan and forgetfulness, so it happens sometimes. So Khalifa Umar was one of those first persons to gather children in that makatib. And the interesting thing is, here he had Amir bin Abdullah al-Khazai actually working, and he would get paid and he would make sure that the system is running. So sometimes, and we'll talk about that, sometimes we need to learn how to establish institutions and organizations. And that means as small as big as it is, we need to get those factors that will make it a success and put it together. So you need a donor, for example. You need someone who would have the financial capability, whether it be the masjid, whether it be somebody of the community, whether it be externally. You need somebody who can fund it a little bit. You need a teacher, obviously, right? The teacher is one of the most important things. After the most important person who is going to do the work is the teacher, the other second most important, actually they are equal importance, is the students. Because you can have the best of teachers, but no students. You have to make sure and establish a student body. Then you may have to do advertising. You should even do things like, websites and being able to connect to them on things like WhatsApp. And, because we're doing all these systems with schooling, why don't we have the same system with our Maktab and having, being able to get students effectively communicating and, giving feedback and being able to connect to their parents and so on. So this is one of the big sore points for us especially in the Caribbean. And we had the same issue that we were discussing in America, and maybe Brother Talha can tell us a little bit about that when he comes on. The Maktab at the time of Umar Ridwan, who was 6 days, established a Maktab system because you need continuity, you need that consistency to be able to move. And children are such that they take a little bit of information. It's not like adults, because we have a greater capacity to be able to, analyze things, understand it, to retain it, to find ways of being able to benefit from that information. Although our brains get, less equipped, children are mentally be able to grasp things faster. So different dynamics. The point I'm making here is that children, when they get that information, they need some time to be able to absorb it, and they need to mature in their mind, and then they'll be able to utilize that information. So you can't teach them, for example, the alphabet in 1 week and expect them to memorize. They'll be able to memorize it, but recognition will take a little bit more time. So it's a bit more stretched out. And similarly in schooling, and the techniques that you need to be implementing for learning for a child needs to be different to adults and so on. So I'm not the one who would have done that and established it, because it needs to be done with consistency as well. So in terms of Umar radiallahu anhu, used to be 6 days with a holiday as well. Here in the Caribbean, it's very hard to tell parents to tell them to come every day. And even if they're coming and they're consistent, they themselves are just dropping off their students and not looking at their progress. So that's something we'll talk about later on, some of the challenges. But the point is, you need the time and the consistency, and trying to establish or get something that is unrealistic, it won't happen. It becomes impossible. And if you're trying to do something that is impossible, then don't expect the results that you hope to see. So this is one thing that is very important to understand, that it needs consistency and over time. 1 day a week, for example, is not enough. So if you're trying to do 1 day a week Maktab, the most you're doing is trying to maintain the identity of the child, but you're not effectively giving the child enough information or enough training or enough ability to be able to read Quran and so on properly. There were 3 teachers, and I'm saying this highlighting that I have the same challenge. I face the same challenge because one of our Maktab systems is a 1 day Maktab that takes place on Saturdays. But nevertheless, it's something that is, the manner of trying to get a certain product, the pathway is somewhat impossible. There were 3 teachers who used to teach the children, and Umar who would pay each of them 15 dirhams monthly. So there was a monthly stipend that would take place, and this is something that should be established properly. And my principle and my understanding of this, which many people differ. I've had meetings over meetings over meetings with many different boards and so on. And I still fight the point, and this is the position I will still maintain, that if you can give the importance to Maktab teachers properly, you will get the proper teachers and you'll be able to get a good service. But if you are sidelining the teachers, not paying them properly, not giving them enough resources, then what do you expect as the outcome? It's not going to work out. And if that's the mentality of the community, they'll continue doing that, where for example, the hafiz in the masjid should be given less and little bit to be able to suffice. And if that's the attitude that we have for the teachers of deen and the maktab teachers, if that's our attitude, and if that's the attitude that we allow people to continue with, then we'll continue like this and continue our decline accordingly, because we don't have the importance. So what I'm saying is 15 dirhams at that time was a very good salary. And if someone would be able to pay a good salary, for example, and dedicate themselves to deen, organizations would themselves be up to that par, which allows the people to get a really good service for what is worth. And that needs to be a discussion that should have in a very big forum to try and make changes and so on, bring people on board, inshallah. Secondly, lastly, Umar Radhiyallahu anhu brought into the system of Friday being a holiday in the Maktab. So it would have actually been the practice of the Friday being the Maktab holiday. And again, because he's a really good example to know that these things were already being spoken about, these things were already being discussed. Some of these things were things that they already highlighted as needs. So we don't need to go further to try to understand it. It's from the Khair al-Qurun, who would have understood these things are part and parcel of the structure of a maktab. It needs to be organized. So here, Umar who said that what is your opinion if I place the best person that you all know and instruct him with justice, how I fulfill my responsibility? And this is sometimes what happens again in Dini affairs. People say, okay, well, I attended a class, so I'm good. Or I sent my child to Maktab, so that's it. I've done my responsibility. Or even in school, saying that, what, my child already went to school, so I don't have to do anything. But the reality is that we give our children lessons, we make sure and pay a tutor, we go and make sure that they're reading, we look at their reports at the end of the term and say that, what, if you're not progressing, you have to do this and that. And you give them, for example, punishments and consequences if they're not able to fulfill the need of their expected results in maktabs in their schooling system. But yet when it comes to the maktab system, everything is okay, well, don't worry, he have more time, and you know what, he's a little boy still, and the attitude is different. Now, some of these points, I'm sure many of you all would have understood this already, and you probably, by be agreeing with me in some of these things that I'm highlighting. And the thing about it is we need to push that idea and that understanding of the importance and get people to hear that as well. So if it means that, for example, you take this recording, because we are recording it, and we forward it to certain people who might need to hear this, then we need to do that. And we need to bring about the awareness in the community to make sure that it is an organized structure that comes about from the maktab system. So in this incident, they said, yes, you fulfilled your responsibility because you did what you're supposed to. He said, no, not until I look into his work that he has completed as I instructed. And the point here is that accountability was something that is already something that we understand in systems. But even in the maktab system, even Umar who understood that he needs to put a system that shows accountability, shows progression, shows a person moving from one level to the other level, and can pick up the gaps and where the issues are in implementing that. So it's very important to understand that as well, that we need to have good accounting systems with quality control of the education and being able to understand that the child is moving from one place to the other. So our time is actually getting closer, and so I'll try wrapping up this presentation. I do want to highlight a little bit about the curriculum before we hand it over to Ustad Talha, inshallah. So let's talk about some of these things. We do have here some of the issues that we face in maktab systems, and these are some of the things I try to highlight in these type of workshops. Put these foundations in place so then a system can run. If the foundations itself is not there, then don't expect to get any type of results, because you have the challenge of implementation afterwards. You have the challenge of continuity. You have the challenge of the effectiveness of the methodology of the teacher, for example, or the mindset of the students, or getting the parents to drop them. So that's a whole bunch of issues that you'll face after establishing a maktab. But when you're establishing a maktab, make sure that certain principal factors are there. Like, for example, you should have a syllabus, right? If you don't have an idea of what is supposed to be taught, then how are you going to actually effectively bring that information across? Because you don't know where it should go, or what level the child should be at, or what is the expectation of a child at 5 years, at 6 years, 7 years, or 10 years old. What information should they have actually gathered? So make sure you have a good, strong syllabus. Time management as well, it should be fixed. A lot of times, when the children come in, they walk into Maktab, they sit down, and you have this very traditional system to which has its benefits, but there's no full-fledged time bounds to the system. And the teacher will just sit there for 2 hours or so, children coming whenever they want, and it's just helter-skelter whenever and however it happens. Then we have no training for muallims. This is one of the big things that's important, and that's why one of the things that we're trying to do here is try to get that understanding that teachers expect a certain type of practice from their students, from the administration, and similarly that the administration can expect that from the teachers as well. So there needs to be a bar set where parents, they understand that the teacher is somewhat qualified. The teacher themselves is not just a person who have the understanding of deen, or maybe studied in Darul Uloom and maybe would have graduated as well, an alim or a hafiz of Quran, or even a person who doesn't have any titles to their name, but have enough information to be able to carry on with a class, a small class, an infants class, a second-year class, and so on. The point is that you should have a bar of your training, the way that you teach your children, a little bit of ability, a little bit of understanding of how to monitor, and all of the different things a good teacher will be able to do. So a lot of times in our maktabs, we just have that as you take it for granted and expect that anybody you can call who might be able to have that or has that information can teach it, or if they can teach it, can be punctual, or if they punctual and they can teach, can run the system. We can't expect that everything just falls into place, but we have to put actual systems in place. Again, with that, similarly, no administrative procedures. So you need to put procedures in place and so on. So if there's a child missing, for example, absent, what is the practice that you should be doing, how to follow up, who's supposed to be following up, and so on, and these kind of things. No supervision. A lot of times it's just one person has to deal with everything, and then it's very hard, very time consuming, and a lot of effort with a little bit of support. I mean, we have some of the solutions to those problems. We have to have a proper syllabus, collective teaching method helps with saving time and ensuring the entire class moves up together. Training for muallims is very important, that they can talk about these issues and find solutions to them, because there are many solutions to the issues that we're facing. Proper administrative procedures and supervision. Another thing is, and I mentioned it earlier, is it's very important to have more days. So you should have not just 3-4 hours on a Saturday. The best thing is that you should have 1.5 hours, at least 2 hours, 4 to 5 times a week. That should be minimum. This should be the standard. Right now we are on low standards, having 1 day and sometimes 2 days, and so what I'm saying is go to different levels. If you can't have that, then have it every other day. If you can't have that, then at least 3 to 4 hours, not just 2 hours, not just 3 hours, but at least 4 hours on Saturday and Sunday, making up like a 6 to 8 hour amount of hours that you're getting, and or mix one weekend with a few days in the week. And now we have the online option. A lot of people are online now, so that can even be one of the facilities that people can use to be able to grasp that days that they're trying to make up on the time that you need to spend with the children. Okay, then we have to, I spoke about this, we should have dedicated staff. And dedication is really important to ensure that it happens. Without the dedication, you'll have a lot of problems. right? So fees, you need to have supervisors as well. So there shouldn't just be a teacher, but there should be someone in charge of the maktab to follow on the curriculum, to follow on the expectations of the children with their level and being able to reach to the level that they should be. There should be monitoring to see if the parents, for example, are doing their part, the children doing their part. So you need rijal, you need people involved as well. And obviously masjid or a maktab, or one of the things in Trinidad, we have a lot of people that say you should go to the masjid for maktab. But if you can have a little private maktab at home and even charge people, this will be just as effective and beneficial, because you can put your own standards, you can put your own way that you want to run your maktab, you can put your fees, you can put all of the necessary implementations to make it a successful one. It's a private one. And I do encourage people, if they're interested in doing that, then they should try doing it, and we can try helping establish it. Try help best advertising it for you in the community, but do it. Nothing is wrong with that, and that's part of the establishment of the maktab system. So again, the 20/80 rule, a lot of it is, if you have a good enough system, a strong and robust system that is organized, puts in all of the requirements of it, then definitely you will have the effect of complete, you'll have the full 80%, but you'll have just 20% of work that actually give you the benefit of all of the objectives that you're trying to have. And right now, this is the opposite side, where 80% people are complaining and old talk, as they say locally here. People are saying that they want to do something, but they're not actually doing it. And doing it means that you have an organized, structured system. So the projected numbers, initially you might start humble, you might start with a little bit, but Brother Talha will tell you, from starting at a level, now in their maktab system, they have to refuse students because they have too much capacity. They have to stop taking these students in, and they have to put alternative systems where a child can go to another system because they can't fit in the daily system that there is. So in our workshop, we will continue with a little bit of curriculum. I will do that now after this. Child psychology will be next week, a little bit of teaching next week, and actually we're doing assessment today, inshallah, with Brother Talha. Some of the resources you should maintain to even have to is computers, books, whiteboards. It should be just as important as the schooling system and the things that you will need there as well. All right, so I end this part. I saw there was one question that came in. The question being that what can we use, or what tools to use for assessment? So Brother Ustad Talha, inshallah, will be going over that, so I'll leave it to him. Let me just take 5 more minutes that I have and just skim through a little bit aspect of the curriculum, and maybe we can talk about it in the end as well, inshallah. Constructive play is work of the children are much needed for effectiveness when dealing with little ones. Arts and craft group wonders, alhamdulillah. Yeah, that's definitely true. And one of the things that should be always highlighted is that children of a lower, in fact, parents, right? And that's something that we have challenges with, is that parents themselves don't even understand the level of their child and the basically the growing and the development of the child at what age they are at. So they expect sometimes 5-year-olds to react as 15-year-olds. And sometimes they think that, like a 10-year-old child is supposed to have a full understanding of certain concepts. And, a 7-year-old child should know certain things. And they're not mindful that each child have a stage of development, and that development stage should be understood at least to be able to effectively, bring that information across to your child and make sure that they're developing as they move forward and so on. So yes, art and crafts and so on, and being able to have, simple motor skills with their Quran and their academic, the Islamic studies and so on is really important as well. And it should be such that, women are generally much better at these jobs for the younger kids, so they're actually the better fit to do those things as well. I think 3 4 hours a day would be a bit much depending on the kid's age. So yeah, 4 5 hours would entail not just being in Maktab and sitting behind a class. And that's one of the things I highlight sometimes is you need to have play, for example, you need to have break, you need to have social time as well. You need to have a time where you're having snacks, obviously, as well. You have to have a time where there's engagement. Sometimes it needs to be on the board, sometimes they have to do activities. So it's not supposed to be where it's, as you say, we have a terminology chalk on board where everybody just sits down, the teacher is in front and he's teaching and the children have to pick up everything. That cannot be the way that even maktabs run anymore, and that should not be the understanding of how it is. How do we deal with different age groups with limited time and teachers? Honestly speaking, this is one of the biggest challenges that teachers have and they will continue to have. One of the realities is that you need to actually you need to take the hard decision, make the hard decisions, and come to a system that you think that will work, and then start building from there. Otherwise, you'll just keep going around in circles trying to figure out how to deal with something that is not working. And that's one of the things in these Maktab sessions. What we try to do is give you the system and show you that establish this system, and everybody else will come in line, inshallah. If you don't put your boundaries, people will keep, as you say, walking over you, and that will continue, and you'll keep trying and trying and trying and frustrating everything around and being non-effective in the system. Please keep in mind that there are different types of intelligence, hence teaching and evaluating should consider this, yes. All right, okay, so let me just touch a little bit on this. I won't spend much time and then I'll hand it over. We have here curriculum and curriculum development, right? And I just want to highlight a few points and I won't spend much time in it. One is there should be a plan, a lesson plan. I mean, one of the balances that I have personally is I run a school as well, and I run Maktab systems as well. And there's complete different methodologies with them. And sometimes it's non-effective in one, non-effective in the other, and you have to make sure that you are adjusting accordingly. And sometimes it is effective in one setting, but it won't work in the other setting. So you need to kind of be mindful of it. The point I'm going to make here, though, is that a lesson plan, a lot of times, parents as well don't understand, like there should be a plan. So they should ask their teachers, what is the plan from here to there? That's one of the things that try to get parents to, if you ask, there will be a communication, because it's a three-way. It's the child, is the parent, and is also the teacher. All of them have to be working together. So even with the lesson plans, parents should know about this as well. And that's something that even teachers in schools, they would do a lesson plan, but they're not actually using that information that they have. They just did it because it's a requirement, for example, from the Maktab to have a lesson plan, or from the school to have a lesson plan. But to be able to integrate what are the benefits of the lesson plans, a lot of times people miss that, and that's a whole training in itself that people should be aware of and try to effectively use their plans correctly and make sure that the outcomes is being attained. So it requires a bit of study and so on. Putting a routine is very important, a timetable, so you have time bounds and so on. Right. The other thing is, as mentioned just now in the comment, there children are at different levels. They might look the same, they might act the same, but they're completely different in so many different ways, and that's something that everyone should be able to recognize by now. So you need to tailor and make certain approaches for each one of them, because otherwise you'll just, you'll be talking to one student sometime in the class, and there's 15 other students that are sitting down there and have no idea what you're talking about. So that's really important that you tailor making each approach in different ways so different children can pick up in different ways that they absorb information. Okay, the big picture of curriculum should be where you have a full-fledged understanding. For example, there's like the hidden curriculum. You see, there's the null curriculum. There's a curriculum that's being taught outside by the parents in the society outside there, in the games that they're playing, in the schooling system that they're going to. You have a curriculum of environment that is actually affecting the child. So that's why in these kind of topics, for example, it's very important to understand your local context as well, because you should understand what are the challenges for local people in dealing with some of the affairs of of, for example, parents committing to their child, whether they will pay for a Maktab system or they won't pay for it. So you'll be able to adjust according to the society and what are the challenges that are being faced. This is not a topic I can go through thoroughly now, but the reality is there's different parts of to be considered when you're looking at a curriculum. So you need to also, for example, when Mashayikh, for example, when they sit with their students and their murids, they would sit down with them and they would try to, influence and just be there in their presence. And that presence itself and being around certain types of people, they benefit you. You get a type of nur, a type of connection, a type of, God-fearingness and those kind of things. The point is, sometimes you can even invite or have children come in just to have stories being told to them, just to sit down with them and interact with them and hear what they're saying. That's part of your curriculum as well. That should be things that you're considering in your system as well. So the intricacies of it, again, we don't have time right now, but I just want to draw the attention towards it that not all aspects are black and white, and you need to consider what is the effect of the home, what is the effect of the society. Games these days are ruining completely the child's mind and taking away from many of their abilities and so on. So just to mention here locally, we actually import these curriculums, and this is one of them that we've looked at thoroughly. It has a really good system, different levels up to level 7, teenagers. There's a textbook and a workbook as well, so it's really good. It's child friendly. The language is child friendly. I don't have time to go into it fully, but we'll try to touch on it a little bit on next week. Qaida as well is something that they have their own one. They go into then rules of tajweed. There's obviously du'as and being taught and surahs, and also there's a qaida, there's an abridged version actually, and there's a juz amma. So these are some of the books that we bring in as well. We found it to be really good, and it's like a baseline that allows other things to take place and you can use it. So some of us have been using this as well, and we found it to be a very effective and good system as well. Besides that, there's a nasiha one, which is really good as well. A lot of content and a lot of information as well. I think Brother Talha and them, they use this in their maktab. And again, this is something that is available. Likewise, there are many curriculums that can be used. And just note that there's many curriculums that are out there. The reality is, if you use it effectively and understand the components as needed, then you'll be able to use any curriculum really and be able to get the objective. But these are some that time and energy has gone into it. There's a lesson plan for teachers as well. There's objectives as highlighted. There's even suggestions of what type of activities that can be done. And these both systems come with that. So it helps a lot with the work that teachers have to do. We know of the Tasheel syllabus. This was used a lot years ago. They've been doing a lot of revamp to these systems. So a lot of them are, these are the older books, but there are newer ones that are coming out if they've not already started rolling them out. I know they were doing a lot of work in revising them as well. There's a system here in the US that is, again, many systems can be used. Again, it depends on the actual structure of the maktab, and that is what makes things effective, inshallah. So similarly, there's different pathways to it. The main thing is getting to the pinnacle there on top of the mountain, and inshallah, I hope that with a little bit of discussions that we had so far, we'll be able to slowly start that process. So as I start handing it over to Ustad Talha, let me see if there's any other comments here. This is really helpful and easy to use. Okay, the software as well. Yes, okay, yeah. So the software is quite good, and we can have a good discussion, inshallah, on that. We'll take some discussions at the end of today's session after Brother Talha, so I'll hand him over at 3:10, inshallah. 3:10 for us. For him, it's actually 2:10. I'll just give you a little insight of Brother Talha. Brother Talha himself has been and you could probably, Rotalha, if you can just put your hands up so I can start making you host and all that. He has been, alhamdulillah, doing a lot of work in in Illinois, there in Lombard. And alhamdulillah, he and a few brothers started up with a masjid as well, and they're actually building a masjid for quite a few years now. And they're doing it, in the best of ways, where slowly, step by step, they're establishing a community. So they have actually been renting a facility for years now on end. And it started with a smaller house, smaller facility, then they had to grow, and then they grew, and then they went to a bigger facility, and then moved to another facility. Now they're actually going into a full-fledged masjid. And over all those years, he's been building the community with him, with the people around him as well. Alhamdulillah, through his effort and the efforts of all of the akabir around them and the brothers that helped, they have established a community without the masjid even being finished and built. And likewise, they've been building the Maktab system, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been giving them and strengthening them from strength to strength, where they were able to build a really effective daily maktab system, a hifz class system, a daily hifz class system, sisters classes, adult classes as well. And now they have part-time classes as well. They went online as well. So alhamdulillah, it was being from one stage to the other stage to the other stage. So he has a lot of experience. Alhamdulillah, he's spent a lot of time as well, and he's effectively understood the system entirely as much as is needed. And I've been with him, I spent time with him. We did quite a few things here and there every so often. And inshallah, I'll be visiting him whenever that time comes, and we hope that he can visit us as well. But nevertheless, without further ado, he had even worked hard in getting some good assessment methods as well with the Maktab system. So I'll leave him to, inshallah, introduce that to you. And I hope that we can all benefit from his experience and all of the work that he's put in, inshallah, in his time. So without further ado, I'll ask Brother Talha, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you all, Jazakumullah khair, for having me, and Jazakallah khair, Mufti Abrar, for all the kind words. Mufti Abrar has actually visited us over here in Chicago, and we've had a couple of sessions, mashallah, and really appreciate. He's helped us out a lot here as well. So Jazakallah khair to him, and for the honor of inviting me over. Inshallah, what I'll do here today is just share some of the experiences that we've had, particularly around monitoring of the maktab. And before we start, inshallah, I'll just kind of start off with a few kind of key concepts and terms, which mashallah Mufti Saab has already covered. When we think about how do we organize a maktab, there are many different aspects of it, but one of them is the academic aspect. So there's a curriculum. Curriculum is, for the way we look at it, is the overall grade-wise progression of learning. So what, if a maktab has, let's say, 5 grades or 8 grades, what is the learning process, what is learned in each grade, and what are the objectives of each. And then the syllabus defines, within each grade, how is that content delivered on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. And then the lesson plan is more, kind of more of a daily schedule of how that content is delivered. Now, in our system, the way that we deliver, or the way that we think about the content is in 4 parts. So you'll see them here: Quran reading and tajweed. So this is really usually the most difficult and the most intensive part of the maktab curriculum. 5-year-olds, kids come in and they learn the qaida, they learn alif bata. Along with that, they learn how to pronounce the letters properly. And then as they start reading the Quran, they continue learning the rules of tajweed. So this is really very, very important part of the curriculum, especially in the beginning. It's actually the most important or most intensive part of the curriculum. The second piece is the Quran memorization. So these are the memorization of du'as, starting from Surah Fatiha, the small surahs, and so on. And then the kalimas and du'as. So starting with memorization of the first kalima, la ilaha illallah, and then all the du'as, small du'as, including very short du'as like Assalamu alaikum or Alhamdulillah, and then continuing with the du'as of salat, and then du'as that go beyond the daily salat. And then the Islamic studies is what the Safar curriculum or the Nasiha curriculum would cover. So these are various topics within Islamic studies: aqaid, the beliefs; fiqh, sirah, tariq, hadith, akhlaq, and adab. These are the way that Nasiha looks at the various topics under Islamic studies. So when we talk about a curriculum, we're really talking about these four categories. Now, it's very important, in the teaching process not only to teach the material, but then to review it with the students, especially the younger students. They continuously need review. And so, whether it's reviewing the topic multiple days, or it's coming back to the topic every month or at the end of a semester, and then to check the knowledge of the material. Inshallah, this is where we'll really focus in my session today, is how do we check that? Now, checking is obviously a continuous process. I mean, if you're teaching a child something, it's always good to make it interactive, to ask them, what they understood. If the instead of doing a lecture, it's more of a discussion format, it becomes interactive. The kids are engaged, and the teacher gets a very good assessment of how much the child is really understanding. And then, of course, applying that in daily life. And this is a circle. So, inshallah, we'll focus really on the check aspect of it, and especially in terms of formalizing it, and how do we, standardize the checking the progression of each student. And inshallah, what I'll be doing is showing you a PDF file that we actually published in our maktab, and several maktabs use this, and we've shared it with them. But this is a book that we use for all the teachers. Before we get into the actual monitoring aspect of it, I just wanted to show you an example of how we have defined our curriculum. And this is something that I would encourage all of you to adopt in your own makatib as well, because it's very important. I mean, especially with the larger makatib where you have multiple grades being taught, it's important to have a very defined curriculum. So what we've done here, which you see the page on the right side, this is a curriculum, kind of a snapshot of a curriculum. So you'll see grade qaida, grade 1, grade 2, and then you'll see, grade 3, grade 4, and so on up to grade 8. And then under each topic or each category, you can see under each topic covered, what are the materials. So for example, if I want to know what kalimas and duas does a student memorize in grade 3, I can look right here and I can see, okay, they're learning the kunut, they're learning the dua to make for the parents, they're learning the dua for entering a house. And in addition to that, they're revising everything that they learned previously as well. Or if I want to know which surahs are they memorizing in grade 3. So I can see here, new memorization, Surah Inshirah, Surah Teen, Surah Alaq, and so on. So this curriculum kind of puts it in a snapshot or in a table, what material each grade is covering. And it's important for your maktab to have this defined. So this is something that I would recommend before you start a maktab, is sit down and say, what are all the different areas that we want to cover, and grade-wise, how do we deliver this material, so that a teacher that's delivering, that's teaching grade 2 knows what they're teaching for grade 2, and a teacher that's teaching grade 3 knows what they're teaching for grade 3. So this is just something I wanted to show you from we call this a maktab register. This is a complete book that we provide to all our teachers as a guide for teaching. And then, so inshallah, from there, we'll jump into the actual monitoring. So when you think about monitoring, there's different levels of monitoring. There's what we monitor on a daily basis, what we monitor on a weekly basis, and then what we monitor on a trimester basis. Our maktab, it runs on a trimester basis. So basically, we divide all our material across 3 different trimesters. And then at the end of every trimester, we send a report card home to the parents. So on a daily basis, what are we tracking? Obviously, we're tracking attendance and behavior. And again, inshallah, what I'm going to be doing is jumping between this book and the PDF to kind of show you how we've done that. And again, these are just examples for you. In your maktab, you can design this your own way. But essentially, this is our attendance and behavior log. So each student, their names are written down here. There's 17 different boxes. And then we check whether they're present, they're absent, they're tardy or sick, Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday. And then along with that, we also have a separate table at the bottom where we're tracking their behavior. So what we've done is we actually have created a code of conduct. And in the code of conduct, we've defined what is good behavior and then what are violations of good behavior. So there's 2 kinds of behavioral violation. There's a simple behavioral violation, which is more of a minor violation, such as not following teachers' directions and class rules. And then there's severe violations, such as fighting with another student. So all of these are marked on a daily basis. And then at the end of these several weeks, we kind of total them up and see how many absences and tardies there are, and how many behavioral violations there are. And these are things that we can use to talk to the parents about improving behavior, about improving attendance. On a weekly basis, we are looking at, depending on the grade level, but most grade levels, we're looking at the Quran reading fluency, and we're looking at the correctness of their letters. So inshallah, I'll show you again from our register how we're tracking that. And you'll have to forgive my pauses. I'm just trying to toggle between these two different applications here. So this is our register for tracking the Quran progress. And again, this is probably a new concept for many people, but we struggled for some time. How do we really measure a student's progress in the Quran? And what we did is we came up with two different areas. One is what we call fluency. So fluency is how fluent or how easily or how naturally can the student read the Quran. And we measure that by the speed of the recitation. So for example, I just came up with, pre-filled this with my name. And on a weekly basis, we do this assessment at the end of the week. And what we do is we have the students read from the Quran, a page that they haven't read before. And we use a Quran that has a 15 lines in it. So every test is standard. And we see how many lines they can read in 3 minutes. So for example, what you'll see here is the first box on the left. It shows the number 4. 4 is the number of lines that a student is able to read within 3 minutes. And then at the bottom of this box is the number 2. 2 is the number of mistakes that a student makes while they read. So for example, if a student incorrectly read a haraka, or they read the wrong letter, or they mispronounced the letter, then that would be considered a mistake, and we would mark it here. So what this first box is saying is in week 1, this student was able to read 4 lines of the Quran in 3 minutes, and they made 2 mistakes while doing so. Then in the second week, the student was assessed again, and the student was able to read 5 lines in 3 minutes, and they made 2 mistakes in those 5 lines. And then in week 3, the student read 7 lines in 3 minutes, and they made 1 mistake. So what you'll see is week over week, you'll see a progression of the student. And this is just obviously a sample, but you can see how this student started with 4 lines, and with practice every day, they were able to progress to 5 lines in week 2, and then 7 lines in week 7. And then the number of mistakes that they were making was reduced as well. Our goal in general with the students is that they should be able to read, to get to a natural fluency level, they should be able to read at least 15 lines within 3 minutes, which is a very natural pace. And before being admitted into any HIS program, we have a higher standard that they need to be reading 20 lines in 3 minutes. So again, this is a very objective measurement. When we talk to the parents about how far their student has progressed, we can talk in these numbers by describing how many lines they're able to read. And then what happens in every grade, whether it's grade 1, grade 2, we divide the students by their Quran fluency. So students, for example, who are just starting and who can't read more than 3 or 4 lines in 3 minutes, we put them in grade 1. The students that are able to get to 7 lines in 3 minutes, we put them into grade 2, and so on and so forth. And the students build this fluency over time until they're able to read at least 15 lines in 3 minutes. And 15 lines is where the student is really natural. They're able to identify the letters, and they can easily understand what they're reading. They're not really focusing on the letters, but if they want to start memorizing, they're able to focus more on memorization and less on trying to recognize the letters. At the bottom of this rubric, what we also have is an assessment of the makharij, or the letters, and their the harakat. Harakat is the ability to stretch the dhamma, kasra, fatha, or not stretch it in the right places. And so what you can see here, if I will try to zoom here so you can see this a bit more closely, we have about 10 letters here that we look at very closely. This is, in our experience, what we found English speakers struggle with these letters the most. So what we've done is we've put these letters into a matrix. And what we do is every 6 weeks, we mark all the letters that the student is doing correctly, and then whether their stretching is correct or not as well. These basically assess for what we call in tajweed lahnul jali. So the student is able to pronounce these makharij correctly, and they're able to do their harakat properly as well. They're not making lahnul jali, which is a major mistakes in tajweed that may change the meaning. And so, for example, this student, between weeks 1 through 6, this student was able to correct the makharij of these letters here: qaf, sad, dad, and so on. Now, this is a cumulative assessment. So what this means basically is by the end of week 6, all of these letters that are marked with an X, these are correct, but the student still has to work on several more letters. So you can see one letter here, another letter here, and then 2 more here. So 4 letters are still incorrect. And then the harakat, the stretching or not stretching, also needs to be corrected. And so then what the teacher will do in weeks 7 through 12 is obviously whatever letters are corrected will be marked here, but then they'll add any new letters that were corrected during weeks 7 through 12. So for example, you'll see this student was able to correct the ha in weeks 7 through 12, and also their stretching was improved as well. But the student still has to work on 3 more letters here, this over right here, and then these 2. So again, this provides a very objective assessment, so the teacher knows exactly what problem areas exist or what challenge areas exist. And so it's not, when a teacher has a discussion with a parent, they can be very specific to say these are the letters that the student is still not able to pronounce properly, and this is what we're working. And then you can see over a period of time how that improvement occurs. So I know this is probably a new concept for many people. So I wanted to stop here and ask any of you if does this assessment here kind of make sense, and any questions about how an assessment like this would be used. One note here is this is for students that are already reading the Quran in terms of the fluency. So obviously the students that have passed qaida, this fluency chart applies to them. But for the makharij, this can be used also for the qaida students who haven't yet started reading fully. Okay, I just got a message here. It looks very detailed, and if I'm honest, daunting and intimidating. Yeah, it can be. I mean, we've actually been trialing this. We've been using this for several years in our own madrasa. I mean, it's something. It takes a bit of time to understand how this works, but alhamdulillah, we've been able to implement it in our own madrasa. We have about 9 teachers that teach maktab, 9 different classes, and yes, it is. I mean, it requires a bit of work. But I think, even if you implement this system slowly over time, or maybe you can, one of the feedbacks that we got from our teachers is that it's hard to do this assessment every week. So some of them do it every second week, some of them do it every third week. But as long as we can see a trajectory, that's kind of the main point. And again, it just helps to provide an objective assessment of the student's progress. One benefit for administrators also is that if you have this objective assessment, when you have new parents that are coming in looking to enroll their child, and you can kind of show them how you assess, it gives a lot of confidence to the parents that the system is organized and that there's a very objective method of measurement. And parents are usually, feel very comfortable when they see that these kinds of techniques are used. All right. So I'm just trying to answer these questions. You said that these are for Quran reading and have come across a similar training, alhamdulillah. For those in qaida, is it possible to replace elongation with, for example, isti'la? Yeah, I mean, these are just examples. This is what we developed for our own maktab, but obviously it's just an example. So you can obviously modify it for whatever areas you think are necessary for your madrasa. If a child is only reading from memory from the 30th part, should I move him to a different reading lesson, like Surah Baqarah? Yes, exactly. So when we test the reading, we want to test their ability to recognize new material. So if they've already memorized the 30th juz, then move them to a different juz. I mean, what I typically do when I test the students on their nazira is I open up Sayakul and I have them read that page. Which surah should a child read after qaida? So I'll kind of jump to our curriculum here to answer this question. And show you what we've, in our curriculum. And again, this is something that you can determine for your own maktab, but I'll show you what we have, which surahs we cover in our system. In grade qaida, we are covering Surah Fatiha, Surah Ikhlas, Surah Falak, and Surah Nas. And then grade qaida is the first grade that we use. Once the students finish qaida, then they move into grade 1. In grade 1, they're covering the smaller surahs in 30th juz, Surah Fil, Surah Quraysh, Surah Ma'un, and so on. Okay, Jazakallah khair, great questions. I'm going to inshallah continue. Okay, so what I just showed you was more of a weekly. And again, it doesn't have to be weekly. In our madrasa, some of the teachers expressed that it was very difficult to do it on a weekly basis. So they had the option of doing it every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, as long as there's a continuous monitoring that can show progress to not only the students, not only the parents, but also to the students. One thing that we found is that when we made the objectives very clear with the students, they knew exactly what they needed to do. So we told the students in the very beginning that right now you're in grade 2 and you're at fluency of 7 lines and we want you to get to 15 lines. Then they knew exactly what they needed to do. And it actually motivated them. Many of these students, they would go home on the weekends when they didn't have maktab and they would want to read at home because they knew that number was very important to get from 7 to 15. Even for hifz, the condition for admission is 15 or 20 lines. So whenever parents come in and the student's nazira is weak, their reading fluency is weak, it's something that you can tell them, look, that we need you to get to 15 or we need you to get to 20, and then you have a very clear measure. So they work very hard when they have those very clear measures in front of them. I'm going to move on, inshallah, to the trimester. So far we talked about a weekly testing. So the Quran reading fluency as well as the letters on a trimester basis. And in your case, if you don't have a trimester system, you have a semester system, you could use it in a semester system. We have the Islamic studies exams. If depending on your curriculum, you can actually get those exams from the textbooks publisher. So for example, Nasiha has a portal. If you go to their portal, you can actually create your own exams. Then there's a general Maktab assessment, which is actually really important. And I want to spend some time, inshallah, showing this to you. And then the trimester report card. So inshallah, what I'm going to do now is jump to the general Maktab assessment. And this assessment is a very comprehensive assessment of the students' overall knowledge across all the areas. This PDF is basically shows right now what we call a comprehensive assessment. So we talked earlier about 4 different subjects taught in the Maktab. And you see those 4 subjects across the left side. So you'll see Quran reading and tajweed, Quran memorization, kalamas and duas, and then Islamic studies. If you recall, one of the questions was, which surahs do we teach the students after grade qaida? So if you look here and look at Quran memorization, you'll see under grade 1, which is after grade qaida, you'll see that we're teaching Surah Fil, Surah Quraysh, Surah Ma'un, and so on. And so what this comprehensive assessment does, it captures the entire curriculum in one page. And it basically provides a checklist to show what the student has learned overall. And so I'll spend a little bit of time kind of showing this. We found this to be very, very beneficial in many different cases, especially when students came and they may be in an advanced grade, but they may not know certain important details from prior grades. So first, I'll kind of take you through this at a high level. You can see that at the top, we keep the student name, we put in their grade, we put in the academic year. You'll see grade qaida, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And then you'll see the next grade is on the back side of this. So when you print this out, it's a 2-sheeter. And on the back side, you'll see grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, and grade 7. Now, for each grade, what we've done, again, you've seen the 4 subjects, reading and tajweed, memorization, and so on. And then within each of these, for every grade, we have written the skills that are needed. So for example, let's look at grade Qaida. In grade Qaida, for Quran reading and tajweed, the first thing they're going to learn is pronunciation and the alphabet, which is Q1. Q1 refers to Safar Qaida, chapter 1. Then letter recognition, mixed and joined letters. Then fluency in words and advanced letter recognition. Then you'll see haraka, fatha, kasra, dhamma, tanween, stretched harakas, and so on. Now, this is all the qaida. And if you actually look at these notations, Q11, Q12, these are the chapters of the Safar qaida. Of course, if you have your own assessment, you could make this correspond to any other qaida that you're using in your maktab. In grade 1 now, we're jumping to students who now can read the Quran, but they're at a very, very basic level. So you can see the skills here. So we teach tajweed at the same time as nazira. So you'll see ta'awudh, mim, noon, mushaddada, that the rule. And then T14 and T15 refers to the chapters in Safar, the Safar Tajweed book that talks about these rules. Then you'll see qalqala, lam of Allah. Then you'll see reading fluency. So at this point, students are reading 5 lines in 3 minutes. Then you'll see some more tajweed rules, ra, mutaharrika, sakina, and so on. And then at the end, you'll see reading fluency is 7 Quran lines in 3 minutes. So what the teacher is able to do is throughout the year, as the students progress, they're checking each of these off. And they're saying that the student has met these or has achieved these skills. Now let's jump to Quran memorization. So within grade 1, students are supposed to memorize Surah Fil, Surah Quraysh, and so on. And so the teacher will check each one of these surahs as they memorize them. And then and so on. And under kalamas and du'as, you'll see takbir tahrima. These are mostly the du'as of the salat. Takbir tahrima, du'a al-istiftah, tasbih of ruku, rising from ruku, and so on. So tasbih of sajda, subhana rabbi al-a'la, completing the salat. And then, grade 2, tashahud, at-tahiyyat, durud Ibrahim, Allahumma salli ala, and so on. Now, what's really important and beneficial with this assessment is that when students come in and they get placed in any grade, what we have the teachers do in the first week is assess the students for all the skills cumulatively up to their current grade. So for example, let's say that a student comes in and we place them into grade 3 because their Quran reading is really, really fluent. And mashallah, they know tajweed. But they may not know how to perform the salat. They may not know, for example, the thana, or they may not know durud Ibrahim. They may not know at-tahiyyat, at-tashahud. So if we didn't have this assessment, what would happen is the teacher would just teach them grade 3 material, which would be under the du'as. They would teach them qunut. They would teach them du'a to make for the parent. But the teacher would not know that this student doesn't actually know how to recite at-tahiyyat, and therefore their salat would be incomplete. And so what the teachers do in the first week is they fill out this assessment, looking at all the material that the student should know up to the grade they're being placed in. And then they know which areas need to be covered. So in our syllabus, the first month of the Maktab is spent filling all the gaps from the prior grades that the student doesn't know. Or maybe they know it, but they've forgotten it. So for example, again, a student in grade 3, we don't just have them memorize the dua qunut immediately, but we make sure that all the duas of the salat that they may not know are covered. And those students, of course, that know these, but maybe after summer vacation, they forgot them, they have a chance to review it. So we spend the whole month on that. And then we continue on. So what this assessment does, it captures their complete Islamic knowledge that we want them to know before they graduate from the Maktab, and we make sure that there's no gaps in that knowledge. The other really helpful thing is when we have conferences with the parents, we're able to show the parents the whole curriculum. It makes the parents very comfortable that there's actually a very structured plan and that the students are being assessed properly. And also what we do is, if you notice here, what I've done is I've marked these 2 skills differently. So there's a plus and there's a check. If you see that at the bottom, there's a key here. What we've written here is if the skill was already known, it was acquired prior to this year, we put a check mark. So in other words, in the first week when the students come in, everything they know when they first come in is marked with a check. And then whatever skills they acquire during the year, meaning during the time the teachers are teaching, those will be marked with a plus. So what this allows us parents to see is the progress that they made in that year. So whatever is marked with a plus is what they've learned this year, and whatever is marked with a check is what they knew when they first came in. So again, very, very useful tool because alhamdulillah, we are able to cover a lot of material every year. And when we can show the parents that the student, mashallah, knows all the surahs that have a plus next to them are the ones that they've memorized this year, the students, the parents feel very happy over the progress of their students. Again, this could sound a bit overwhelming. It takes a little bit of time in the beginning of the year to do this, but that little time, especially, it takes us usually typically 1 week. Sometimes it goes into the second week of assessing the students. Teachers typically will have 8 to 10, sometimes 12 students. So it takes a little bit of time to fill this out. But what it is because these students are coming to us as an amana, we want to make sure that if they come to us, the students that are, we're not just teaching them qunut, but we're making sure that they know the kalima, they know the attahiyat, they know all the basics of what they need to know. So they don't go through the whole year, but miss very important essentials that they should have known when they came to us. So again, to recap, very, very useful tool to make sure that student knows what they know, what they need to know properly. It's a good review tool. It's a very good visual representation of progress. It provides students motivation. It also provides parents a lot of motivation on what the students are learning. And I didn't really go into much detail, but at the bottom is Islamic studies. Here we've just included in very, very small type whatever topics they learn in the Safar book. So for example, if I blow this up, you'll see that grade 1, they're covering introduction to the 5 pillars, introduction to tahara, the method of wudu, and you can see N1 refers to Nasiha book 1, and so on and so forth. So that was for fiqh. If I jump to Sirah, they learn about the childhood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his youth, his marriage to Khadija radiallahu anha, and his children. Something that we can copy, we can give it to the parents, and at the end of the year, they have a very good grasp on what the students learned during this year, and they also can see what the students will continue to learn if they continue enrolling them for next year. So again, I know this is a lot here, and it could seem overwhelming, but again, we alhamdulillah have been able to implement it. It took a 1 year of learning for the teachers, but now we've been doing it for several years. It's been very, very effective for us. Alhamdulillah, we are very comfortable that the students that are coming in, that we're really assessing them properly and able to impart whatever knowledge is essential for them. So even if they come in for 1 year only, but we make sure that everything that was supposed to be covered prior to that year, that they've covered. All right, and the last assessment that we provide the parents is a trimester report card. And again, I'm going to show you an example of what we have. And this is just more of a sample for you that you could use it as a guide for what you can develop for your own maktab. And again, what you're seeing here in the PDF is it's a complete book. In the beginning of the year, we give this book to the teachers, and they're able to, they kind of fill it out, and at the end of the day, they leave it in the office. And as a principal, we can go in and we can see, what the progress of each child has been. If there's any children that need extra help, the principal can quickly see it through the book, and they can, reach out to the parents and try to come up with some kind of improvement plan. So what you're seeing right now is trimester report cards. And again, what we've done is we've divided the report cards into the 4 different subjects: Quran reading and tajweed, Quran memorization, kalima and dua, and Islamic studies. And the teacher basically all he or she has to do is fill this out with a grade. If they're in qaida or nazira, fill that out. What is their fluency? Kind of a key objective measure. And then in Islamic studies, whatever subject they've covered, they will check that for that trimester, and then give a grade and comments for the parents. The final thing that I want to cover is one more thing in this register, which is a syllabus. So we talked earlier about a curriculum being a yearly progression of content, whereas a syllabus is more what is covered during the year for a particular grade. And what we've done is we've standardized that for the teachers to make it easy. What happens is that when they're new teachers, if you provide them this guide, it's very, very helpful for them. And for teachers that are have been teaching for some time, it's a again, for them it's very simple as well. But basically what it does, it divides the content into weekly pieces that they can deliver. So what I'm going to try to do here is take you through one example. So this is the weekly content for grade Qaida. And so at the top, we kind of have a suggested time of allocation. So our maktab runs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and it runs for 1.5 hours. So this is how we've allocated the time. Quran reading in Tajweed, we spend 50 or 55 minutes every day. On Quran memorization, we spend 10 minutes or 5 minutes every day. And then for kalimas and du'as, we spend another 10 minutes every day. And this could be different for every grade. So you'll see that if I went through the grade 1 syllabus, it would be a slightly different schedule. But again, what this is a kind of a result of several years of teaching, and we've consulted with the teachers and felt that this is the best allocation of time. And then for every subject, what are the students learning every week? We've documented that on a week by week basis. So for example, in the first week, it's all about student introductions, motivational sessions, placement exams, and then all the assessments. In the week 2, they're continuing to do the comprehensive assessment, which I just showed you earlier. But then we start focusing on the actual material. So you'll see on week 3, the students are memorizing Surah Fatiha under Quran memorization, and under Dua memorization, they're memorizing the first kalima with the meaning. So they spend, for example, in this syllabus, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, they continue to memorize Surah Fatiha. And on the Dua side, they're doing the first kalima, and then they're doing the second kalima. Then when we get into the second page here, which is week 7, or let me jump to week 8. So again, in week 8, they continue to memorize Surah Fatiha. And then in week 10, they're now starting to memorize Surah Ikhlas. But at the same time, they're also continuing to revise Surah Fatiha. By week 10, in terms of du'as, they're memorizing the dua before eating, the ta'awud and tasmiyah, and then they're revising all the previously memorized kalimas. And what the teacher can do as they go through every week, what you see here are the week numbers. So trimester 1, week 10, which is just week 10 overall, or trimester 2, week 1, which is week 13. The teachers can continue checking the boxes as they complete the syllabus. They check the box, and that way the principal can come in and they can see how far the students have progressed. So sometimes what happens, in certain areas, the teacher has progressed further than the syllabus for a particular week. In some areas, the teacher may be behind. But if there's any issues, then we can develop a strategy to make sure that the entire syllabus is covered. Our syllabus is meant to be delivered over 36 weeks. So you'll see that it's 36. The last week is 36. And then we complete the comprehensive assessment to document everything that the student has done for the whole year. And then this next page is basically grade 1, which is so there's a separate syllabus for grade 1, separate syllabus for grade 2, and so on. So every grade will have their own syllabus, and it becomes very simple for the teachers to know what they need to teach during that time.
I had an interesting question, probably not so relevant for the discussion, but when you were online, how did you keep the books? So who kept the books at that time?
Yeah, online actually, that was interesting because all of our classes were on site. Online, what happened is the teachers were teaching on Zoom, so they actually had a copy of the book and they would, mark it. So the books were with them. Now, if the teachers ever needed to, for example, give a report card, they could scan that report card in from the book. Even if there wasn't a scanner, they could have simply just taken a photo of it and sent that as a PDF to the parents.
One of the things, the initiative here that we have, inshallah, is touching on some of these topics so you'll have an understanding of maybe what is needed, but not just that, trying to find out how we can establish more makatib in the country and wherever you are. So if you can help with, pinpointing and highlighting some of the problems you're facing, we can start coming together as a group and trying to resolve some of those issues as well. How is the graduation conducted?
So obviously, that's something that you can determine for your own maktab. We ourselves, we don't actually have a very extensive graduation system. That's something that we probably should be doing more. But we do give the students certificates. I think eventually, inshallah, our goal is to actually have like a proper ceremony where we can give certificates to the kids, the parents attending. What we've done for our HITS program, where we do have more of a formal graduation procedure, is generally our masjid has kind of an annual banquet, and so we make the first part of that banquet a graduation ceremony where we're giving the diplomas to our HIPS graduates. So they're coming up, the teachers are giving it to them, and we're acknowledging each one of them by name. But I would encourage, that's a lot of makatib in the Chicago area where we are. They do have graduation ceremonies for even like a summer program, for example. So definitely very helpful. It's motivational for the kids, and even not just the kids, but it's actually really good for the parents. Parents feel happy. It kind of spreads the message of the importance of Islamic education. But we ourselves from Maktab up to now have not really had a formal graduation ceremony. But again, it doesn't mean that it should be done. I don't know if that was enough detail, Mufti Saab. If you can maybe give more information from your side or your experience, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's correct as well. And for us, we do have a lot of times the importance for the maktab system, but some of the principal issues are actually not addressed. So as that's just been a topic you mentioned there, a lot of people would have in their masjids, this is the community masjid, they would have a big jalsa, for example, for the end of the year. And a lot of emphasis has gone into having a jalsa for students to come up and maybe do a little bit of poetry and have a little speech going, and your students actually graduating from one level to the other. And that had been given more emphasis than the actual need of the maktab and the kind of foundational issues, the monitoring, how much students actually reading Quran properly, how much of them are actually progressing, how many of them are moving to a level where you feel confident that this child is secured in their Islamic knowledge. And that has been a trend here for us locally. I mean, me personally, I could talk about my masjid. Is one of the big things that they would look forward to. When I came in and I started to kind of downplay it a little bit, people were really angry with me. And then, it started to have a little bit of reaction because people felt that, what, you're taking away from the kids' moments. But the reality is, I found it to be that they were celebrating something that they did not achieve. And I found it to be a little bit difficult and something to somewhat realign a little bit. Although we didn't stop it completely, we just felt that there's not such of a big need for a graduation if the core items of learning wasn't being fulfilled. So these are some of the things I have experienced.
I want to actually add in there, and Mufti Abrar, you'll remember because you were here in Chicago during that time when we had our banquet for the masjid. And as a question was asked, I just remembered that we debated, okay, what are we going to present to the community? And many people gave this idea, let's do a nasheed. And what we thought is, well, we don't really have nasheeds in our curriculum, but let's show the parents and let's show the community what the kids are actually doing. So if you remember, and I remember that you were part of that presentation, we asked the teachers to select a few of their students to demonstrate their knowledge of Quran and their tajweed. So we had these little, I think they were first graders, and mashallah, you'll be happy to know some of those first graders are actually now doing hifz this year. The first batch has started hifz this year. But they had just finished their qaida, and they just started their reading. And so we were teaching them tajweed rules. So what we did is we had our MC with all the students lined up in the front. I believe there were 5 of them. And the MC would ask them, okay, can you please recite Surah Fatiha or recite Surah Ikhlas? And they would recite Surah Ikhlas, and they would recite, for example, with Surah Ikhlas, with the last word, Kufuwan Ahad. So the teacher would ask, what tajweed rule did you adopt in the last word, ahad? So so the student would say, qalqala. Then the presenter would ask another student, can you tell me what qalqala is? So the student would say, qalqala is when you have qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal with a sakin, and you bounce it slightly. And so that's something that we actually showed the community. And I remember we got a lot of feedback from people that said, wow, that's not really impressive. We've never seen this kind of a presentation. And for a 6-year-old kid to talk about qalqala, that was quite impressive. So that's one thing I would suggest, whether it's in a graduation ceremony or it's outside of a graduation ceremony. We, even when any of our HIF students completes the Quran, after Jummah, we have them do the last lesson. And so they are able to recite their last lesson. The musallis, the community can see the tajweed level of tajweed of the student. And so if you can demonstrate what they've actually learned during the school year, that's very helpful. We even did a quiz with the parents where we asked the parents certain facts that the students had learned during the year. So for example, we asked them, they studied Islamic history and the Diwan. Diwan was the treasury established by Uthman radiallahu anhu. So we asked the parents, can you tell us what the Diwan is? And the parents didn't know. Then we asked the students, and then the students were able to answer that question. So these are the kind of things I think would be very beneficial if you can just demonstrate what they've been learning in any ceremony, whether it's a graduation ceremony, maybe your masjid has a fundraising event, and you can demonstrate that as the product of what your masjid is producing. So that would be very beneficial. And we got a lot of very good feedback about that as well. We actually have published this as a book on Amazon. And if it's not available to you, inshallah, I think we will try to make it available for you, even if it's just an electronic format, so that you can benefit from it, inshallah. So Mufti Abrar, if you maybe we can coordinate to provide any of this material. Inshallah, eventually what we're going to do is be putting it up on our website so people can download it as well. But if you have any of these materials, any of these assessments, if you find them to be useful, we'll be more than happy that you could use them as well, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
So Jazakallah for that. And I thank Brother Ustad Talha for his commitment as well. He did a lot of work to, alhamdulillah, help with this assessment and to be able to actually see a child move from one level to the other. And, just documenting it itself, so it can be a task for us sometimes, where we see the need for it, but, putting it into a system which is, as you mentioned as well, effectively you can show a parent as well what the child should be learning, and you can actually see the progress of that child from one level to the other. So I think it's something that's really good, and it needs to probably be tweaked a little bit for your situation, for your maktab, for your syllabus that you're using. But essentially, once you use the principle behind it, it's really simple and straightforward to do, inshallah. So I thank him for his contribution today, inshallah. And as I said, we do have the second session next week, inshallah. We have approximately 3 presenters. We have Brother Yazid, who will be talking a little bit about the children's psychology and so on, and classroom management. We have Mufti Ubaidullah as well, who will be talking a little bit about methodology of teaching and some of the things that you can implement in teaching as well, and establishing the Maktab system as well. And also I'll have a short session as well. And we may, if we can squeeze in a little session on lesson planning and effectiveness of doing so as well, inshallah. So without continuing, inshallah, I think we've kept our time, and I think we've covered all that we had to cover today. Feel free as well to send emails, suggestions as well as emails. You can even message us on the WhatsApp number that we have, the office WhatsApp number. And you can feel free to carry on the conversation, because as I said, one of the things that we're trying to do is continuously establish more and more systems and maktabs, or at least bring the awareness to people that they can establish a maktab, they can ensure that it is working effectively, they can talk about it to their communities. If it means that we host a special session in the masjid just talking about the challenges of maktab, what can be done, we can actually have delegations going and meeting the imam, community leaders, to kind of like bring around the awareness that this is also something that we are willing to help with, inshallah. Not just from Al-Ihsaan Institute, we are, been talking about this need in Trinidad Tobago particularly, and if there's anyone from other countries as well, we can help similarly. But we are willing as a group as well of ulama who had come together to try and establish Maktab as well. This is some of the initiatives that they will be doing as well. going to communities and helping set up their maktabs as well. So Jazakumullah for your time, your effort, and coming here as well itself has made it a success. I thank again Brother Talha for his contribution, which is very valuable, alhamdulillah. And I hope that we can continue this conversation next week. Jazakumullah. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.